everybody, all my followers, be welcome to another video. Wow, I really need a shave. Right, be welcome to another video. Today, 6th of December of 2020. Don't know why I mention it, but right, what this video is about, thumbnail, title might tell you, but just before we get to that, I would just like to share with you that the reason why I've showed you that front disc is because if you noticed, they are brand new discs again. So if you guys follow my channel, by the time you've seen this video, I've seen the other one. The car had brand new hubs, discs, pads, refurbished calipers, the lot, everything brand new, beginning of the year, around March. And all that to, well, not all of it, the bearings at the front, they were changed because one of the bearings was a little bit noisy, so I thought it was better to get it changed. But the discs, etc., it was mainly to try to resolve a vibration and the braking. Well, not just in the braking, high speed, anywhere about over 100 miles per hour, which is about 150 kilometers per hour, I would start to feel a sort of a vibration on the steering, and it would vibrate extremely badly under braking. I put the new discs, etc., and the car was beautiful. For you guys that follow me on Patreon, I've done a video just for Patreon around July, June, I think, where I actually mentioned that. The car was beautiful, running beautiful, no vibrations, no nothing. However, the vibrations started again. And when did it started? I actually drove to Portugal on this car back in August. And I stopped at the border between Spain and Portugal. For you guys that are familiar with it, or for you guys from Portugal that follow me, I stopped at Vilar Formoso. So I stopped there and we slept over on that little hotel just by the border. And believe me or not, the following day when I start driving again on the A25 road, I felt the vibration again. Some of you are going to say, well, my friend, you're back to Portugal. It might be true, but the truth is, that's where I start to feel it again. And that was really frustrating because, as I said, everything was brand new. There was no justification why that would start to vibrate again. However, further on investigation, so when I came back to Portugal, I actually first went in there to a friend's garage just to check if there was anything broken, if was everything looked okay. So when I got back to the UK, I checked for the calipers to see if they were seized, if something got stuck in there, everything was spot on. Then I checked, and one of the discs, passenger side, the run out was quite bad, or it was very visible. So the discs were brand new. So after a little bit of discussion with BMW, they actually gave me new discs. I had to pay for the new pads, but they gave me brand new discs, which I just fit them yesterday, Saturday. So just fitted them yesterday, and the car is driving beautiful again. No vibrations, no nothing. We'll see for how long. Anyway, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. This is not what this video is about. So let's gonna move on to what this is actually about. So when I first bought this car, and when I showed you the video for the car, I mentioned that I was very aware of all the cancers with this car, which some of them, they have been tackled already by the previous owner or the previous owners. I had the paperwork for it and everything matched up. So the car already had the throttle bodies, the lifetime ones, already had the SMG pump updated to a newer version, whatever that is. So that's been done. But there was one thing that was not done, which was the Conrod bearings. So on these cars, guys, it's not really a matter of if they fail, it's a matter of when they fail. So the car, I bought the car with 64,000 miles, around there. The car is now 71,190. I just picked up the car yesterday from having the Conrod bearings done. So after a little bit of research, I found, and a lot of digging into who I should give the car to. Don't take me wrong, I had offers to get this done, but honestly, this is a very specific job. It's a very delicate job to be done, and honestly, I wanted to be someone that had at least experience with this, and that had all the tools, all the knowledge, etc, etc, etc. So after a lot of search, I found someone that had very good reputation. They work mainly with BMW and mainly the M Sport ones, so M cars, that's what they focus on. And I was really happy with all the work they carried out. I'm extremely happy actually with the work they've done on the car. It's really foggy today. You cannot see over like 10 meters in front of you. Damn it. Right. So yeah, as I was saying, I'm really happy. The guys have been so professional. They've been fantastic. Now, at the moment, I'm waiting for them to send me an authorization for me to use their video. So part of their work, or as part of the job, when they do this, they actually record, in my case it was 12 minutes, they actually record a video of the job they do, which is, wow, more than probably a lot of people would do. So they actually record a video when the bearings comes out, they explain everything they are doing, etc, etc, etc. They send me that link, the video's on YouTube, but obviously I can't use their footage unless they give me a authorization for me to use their footage, because otherwise I'll get a strike for copyrights, and I don't want that. But basically what they show, guys, in case if I don't get that authorization in time, I've downloaded the video for myself anyway, so I have the video for my own records. But in case if they don't, basically what they show you is they show you when the engine is actually open at the bottom. In my case, they showed the last bearing they were doing. That's when they recorded it. They show you taking the measurements with the plastic gauge. They actually do the measurements on every single one of them, and they actually give you a spreadsheet with the clearance on every single bearing. And what they actually do, which is really fantastic, is they do a kind of a mix and match. Now, I chose to go ACL bearings, not the BMW ones. Everything else is BMW, by the way. Bolts, the Vanos pipe, by the way, the Vanos pipe was done as well, so I requested to have the Vanos pipe done, even though I had no issues with Vanos or anything like that. I don't think my hose was yet leaking, but while the car was in bits, had to be done. But yeah, so they show you all that, and they show the gauge with the plastic gauge, as I was saying. And what they do actually is they do a kind of a mix and match. So they use the bearings with and without tolerance, and what they do is they will mix and match the bearings, so in the end you have the same clearance pretty much on every single rod, on every single bearing. They don't just throw the same bearing to every single cylinder. They actually mix and match, and I thought that was really fantastic. Get to the end and know that every single journal will have the same clearance. That's, I think, is very professional. Anyway, on the video they show you everything they are doing, and then they show the bearings in the right positions. If I don't get the video, I will be showing the bearings anyway in the end. But yeah, so they show you the bearings, etc, etc, and that's about it really. But ideally I would be using their video. I will see if I get their authorization to use the video. But yeah, so the M5 went under surgery to get the Conrod bearings done. Now, you guys are probably very curious to see the bearings, how bad they were. I confess my heart dropped when they showed me the footage on one of the bearings at least. According to them, They have pictures as well. I didn't got those pictures yet. I hope I do get the pictures in the meantime. But according to them, they said yes, even though it was quite worn out, no damage to the journal was done, so the journal was in perfect conditions. He said actually all the journals were absolutely perfect, no problems at all. And it's really nice, that sort of peace of mind now, because before it was always that thing in the back of your head. It was always like, how bad are they? Is the bearings gonna spin on me? What's, you know, it's always that concern. It's very nice. It's a very good feeling now driving the car, knowing that that job is done. No worries anymore. It's really nice to know that. He honestly said that number 2 was bearing number 2, by the way, cylinder number 2. He actually said that number 2. He said to me that obviously it was very difficult to predict how long it would last, but he reckoned that possibly another 20,000 miles on a sensible driving, or a couple track days, it was probably enough for that bearing to start to fail. That would mean, so on these cars, guys, a failed bearing is pretty much, the car is done. Bearings, you know, you either start to spend a lot of money getting new crankshaft, a new Conrod, and dismantle the entire engine, or you get a new engine. There's no two ways about it, really. So I was very happy. I'm gonna confess, I was very nervous until they came back to me saying everything was good. I was really nervous because I was always waiting bad news, mate. With my luck, I was waiting for bad news, but luckily it didn't reveal to be bad news. Actually the opposite. Everything is good with the car, and I'm extremely happy. So hopefully I'll be able to show you that footage now. If I can't show you that footage, I think I will meet you next when I show you the bearings, and we'll talk a little bit about it, even though I'm talking already for 12 minutes and you probably are not interested. But yeah, so that's where we are, guys. And oops, okay. So that's where we are, guys. So yeah, just stay tuned. We'll see what you're gonna see next, if the footage or me again.
Hi Louis, it's James at Redish Motorsport. Thanks for bringing your M5 to us for the Conrod bearing replacement, and also the Vanos high pressure pipe. We're going to show you some of the internal workings now of the engine and explain what we're doing during the process. So as you can imagine, lots needs to be disconnected first of all to actually get access to the engine. This work carries out with the engine in position still. So we need to disconnect the steering tie rod arms, the front suspension arms from the subframe. Then disconnect your subframe and steering rack and remove that in one piece and place it safely on the ground, whilst we then install our special tool subframe, which is one that we made years ago, which is simply a subframe with a middle missing. So we've got a right-hand side for the engine subframe and one for the left-hand side. That allows the engine to sit on our subframe special tool and load its energy normally into the chassis legs whilst we stand directly underneath it and work on the car. But because the middle is missing on our special tool subframe, we can take the sump off of the engine really nice and easily. And then we've got access to the inside of the engine. So in a minute, we're going to go on and talk about the Conrod bearing process, which is going to happen shortly. But first of all, we've started with the Vanos high pressure pipe. And you can just see the new one is just there. It's a bright silver new pipe because it's the BMW one. And that goes all the way through the inside of the engine, sort of what would be the timing case area, and comes out behind the water pump pulley, which is up there. That's why we've got quite a lot of components off in the engine bay. We've got the electric fan out of the way, some of the belts disconnected, water pump pulley is moved, and also I think there's some pipes or brackets out of the way. You can see we're protecting the radiator with some cardboard where we're working up in that area, and that's because the Vanos high pressure pipe that comes down through the engine, it actually pops up out in the valley just up there. So we have to draw it out through the top of the engine once it's disconnected from the bottom, and then the new one gets inserted from the top, comes through the engine and places itself just here next to the Vanos pump. And then shortly we're going to be installing new copper sealing rings and then the banjo bolt through that. But first of all, we have to set the backlash of the Vanos high pressure pump. It's driven by a helical gear, this one here, driven straight off of the crankshaft, and because it's helical gear driven, it needs to have a set backlash or amount of play between those two gear wheels, and that is very specific. It's between 0.06 and 0.08 of a millimeter. So to do that, we have to use the BMW special tool, which is a steel block here to create a component for the magnetic base, and then the arm system to hold the DTI gauge, which is this item here. And we've got it set up, and we've got it set up to between that tolerance, and you can see the needle is pressing on one of those. Darren's now just going to move the Vanos high pressure pump gear, and we're going to watch this gauge, which is on 0, and it should hover to about 7, which is perfect. So we know we're between 0.06 and 0.08. We can't get that any better. Now that pump can be tightened, and we know the backlash is set perfectly, and then finally we can install the bottom of the connection for the high pressure pipe, and then that part of the job is done. We obviously have to rebuild the front edge of the engine, but then we can move on to the Conrod bearings, which are coming up next. So we're now able to show you the Conrod bearing process. Now the Vanos pipe section is all finished, so we've got new copper bolts in there, banjo pipe torqued up, the backlash is set, and we've moved on and worked through the Conrod bearing and bolt replacement. So as you may well know, the engine block, which is the lower part of the engine, has inside of it the crankshaft, which is the big rotating mass, and around the crankshaft journals are the Conrods. Now the Conrods are the items that have the bearings in them, that are the ones that we're replacing, and they also have Conrod bolts. So to just show you an example of a fully fitted Conrod, looking up here through the engine, this is in a Conrod, for example, which goes up through, it's quite a long piece, and goes up to the piston. That's the bottom of one of the pistons, and it's connected with a gudgeon pin through there. The Conrods are in 2 pieces. You've got, you won't be able to see it, but there's an invisible sort of join line about here, and those 2 pieces are independent to each other. So you've got the Conrod, and then this is the Conrod cap. They're held together with these items called Conrod bolts. You can see these are new ones because they're a different color to the other bolts that are already oil covered in the engine. These are fresh new BMW Conrod bolts. They've got green paint on them. We've added that, and that tells us that we've carried out the specific torque process on that bolt, and then we can move on safely to the next one. It's very unique. The BMW stretch bolts, they have to be stretched effectively, which is by doing it, torquing them 3 times. So 6 Newton meters, 20 Newton meters, and then a 130-degree turn. That has to happen 3 times, released in between each stage. And then when we know the 3rd and final one's done, we paint mark the bolts green, and that tells us that we're happy with that joint and we can move on to the next one. So we always start at the front of the engine, which is position number 1. That's separate to cylinder, but it's position number 1 there. And then we move on towards the back of the engine, and we're on now position number 10, being yours a V10 engine. And on the last ones, we always do this video to show our customers what's going on and explain a little bit about the next stage here, which is plastic gauge. Now, plastic gauge is measuring the clearance between the crankshaft journal and the Conrod bearing. Now, we do the plastic gauge measurement on every single cylinder, and we record that data for you and offer it to you on a spreadsheet. But we only video the very last one because otherwise it gets quite repetitive and quite a long video for you. So this one looks quite different because we've got the Conrod cap taken off of this one. So the Conrod is still fitted, as they all do. They remain in the engine, but once the cap is off, then we can access the bearings. And once the bearing is out of the way, then we get a chance to look at the journal here. So that's the highly polished, critical item that needs to stay perfectly good and in good condition, and that's the one that the bearings run around. But they don't actually touch that journal. They float on a film of oil, which is technically called a hydrodynamic wedge, and that film of oil has to be a set gap. The human eye can't see the tolerances that we're working with, so we have to use a special system called plastic gauge, which is why there's this red piece on here. This is basically what we call squashed plastic gauge. So it starts life as a very small, thin strip of plastic, and you lay it across the journal and then install the bearing, the cap and the bolts, carry out the torque process to squash it. Then you take all those items off, and then you look at the squashed piece of plastic and you see how far it's spread. So then we then use the plastic gauge measuring chart, which is this item here, to see which is the closest one it fits to. And this is actually 0.063. So we're just going to hover it, thank you, over there. That's the closest one we can get to match. So that's 0.063 of a millimeter, compared to something at this end, which obviously it doesn't match, and up at this end it's well off. And looking at all the others, the closest one on this cylinder is 0.063, which is perfect. So the BMW tolerance is between 0.025 and 0.007. So we are increased clearance, which is better than the original BMW ones, which are around about 0.038 to 0.050. And that's because we use the ACL custom mix set, which is done here at Redish Motorsport. So we use a H and a HX set. HX is the extra clearance ones, and we basically give you the best chance, or your engine, the best chance of having a custom set of bearings, because we plastic gauge measure every single one when we've got those in. And if one was too large, then if one cylinder was too large, then we would come back to the drawing board, use a different bearing in a different location, and do the plastic gauge measuring again until we got a good specification. Now, all yours have been very consistent. We've got between 0.05 and 0.063 on your engine, which is excellent. So we're a little bit better clearance than BMW, but we're still within BMW's safe tolerance. So we're very happy. This last one is checked out fine now, so we're totally happy. All the bearings are within spec, and we're going to finish up on this cylinder very shortly by cleaning the plastic gauge plastic off, lubricating the bearing. I should say as well, that is part of the bearing. You can just see it's about 2.5 millimeters thick going across there. That's the back of one of the bearings, and it goes round the back of the Conrod and pokes out just down there. And the other bearing is out of the picture at the moment. We'll go and look at that one maybe shortly. Once it's lubricated with the new bearing in, we'll install the bolts, carry out the torque process 3 times, and then that process is finished. We obviously have to then install everything and rebuild the underside of the car in reverse order. So that means that includes cleaning the sump, the perimeter of the block, installing a new sump gasket, new O-rings for the oil pickup pipes that go in here on the oil pump. And once the engine is oil tight, we'll obviously fill with Castrol 1060 M-Power oil, new genuine BMW oil filter kit, which goes in the remote location over there underneath the offside headlight. And then once the steering rack's on, it'll have new power steering sealing rings and CHF 11S power steering fluid. The underside mechanical items will be rebuilt in reverse order. And once we are happy that the car is safe to start with all the components fitted, we'll run the engine up to temperature with it on the lift so we can inspect and watch what's happening over the sort of 30 minutes it takes to warm up. And when we've achieved a correct oil level, fresh oil level reading, we can then consider about going out on road tests for 12 miles as our normal process to make sure everything is okay. So it's also just going to show you over to the bench. You'll be probably very keen to see the old bearings, and we will let you have these as we do with the new, the old Vanos pipe as well, which is the dirty old one that we've taken out of your engine. You'll be so when the bearings come out, we identify them straight away by writing on them. So cylinder 1 gets a 1, and obviously going all the way through to cylinder 10, which is marked up as 10. And then we identify them further by telling you where they came from in the engine. So L means lower in the bottom of the engine, and U means upper. It was in the top of the engine. And it's very common that the upper bearings do get a harder life, and that's what we're seeing on your bearings. All the lower ones are relatively good. If they came out, for example, like 8 lower, we would be happy. That's a little bit worn, but very not much at all. That would be considered quite a good bearing. But they've not. They've come out relatively worn. We've got 2 stages of wear going on here, which I'll explain. So if we look at between my fingers there, we've got a different coloured patch, which is more of like a greeny olive colour. And that is the lead content which has been exposed in the bearing. And then when you start wearing through the lead colour, you start to then expose copper, which you can just see coming through there. And copper is noted on quite a few of these bearings, but the worst one is cylinder number 2. That one's got an extreme amount of copper. And there is no more sacrificial layer before the bearing starts breaking up. So copper is your last line of defense before the bearing becomes defective and starts delaminating, which we've seen happen many times. So these were definitely sensible to be replaced. It's hard to say how long you had left on these. On road mileage with sensible driving, they could have lasted another 10 or 20,000 miles, or some spirited driving or 1 or 2 track days, with hard usage, and they could well have expired, especially on cylinder number 2 upper. So great to know they're not in the engine anymore, they're not causing you any risk, and we'll get these bagged up for you along with the Conrod bolts and the Vanos pipe, so you can take these away with you and always inspect them. And if you were ever to sell the car for any reason, if you had to in the future move it on, then it's a great thing to pass the next owner as well. Maybe a copy of this video and some of our pictures and documents. It just shows how well we think and how meticulous the work is that we offer for the Conrod bearing replacement. So hopefully you found that video informative. And if you've got any questions on our findings or any of our process, please do let us know and we'll be happy to answer you. As soon as the car is complete, we will let you know that it's ready for collection once we've completed our road testing. Thank you very much for choosing Redish Motorsport for your Conrod bearing work. And if we can help with anything else in the future, please do let us know.
Okay, that's going to record the last part of this video because I needed to finish that off. So as you have seen from Redish Motorsport's video, I'm not going to be able to explain it any better. A very complete video where they show you pretty much everything. So I think after what you have seen, there's not much more to say. Still, I will take you through the bearings and I will show you everything again. The first thing I want to ask you guys is, please don't tell the missus that I brought all these to my living room, because I will be literally a dead man. Right, so let me do one thing here, which is turn the phone light on. So this is the bearings. So as he explained, so here I have all the bearings from the upper side. They are in order from 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. No, they are not. This is wrong. Sorry, guys. I was pretty sure I had these in order. Oh, dear me. Right, so this is the upper rings. They are in order. The upper bearings, that's the lower bearings. They are not in order, but it doesn't really matter. But that said, so as we look through there, definitely number 2. Forget about some of the scratches you see now inside, because they have just been inside the bag, obviously rumbling on each other, and they start to get scratched that they were not there initially. As you can see, like that scratching there on the side, etc. But it doesn't really matter. This obviously feels really smooth when you get your hand through. But you can see this one, he was bad. He was very, very bad. And possibly, as he said to me, close to fail. So if I would carry on driving, definitely these would fail on cylinder number 2. When you look here, and you can easily see on the lower side, number 2 also match being the worst one. So all the other ones, they are not too bad, but number 2 definitely you can see was slightly worse than all the other ones. He would be failing on number 2. Number 1, the copper was also exposed already, I'll leave it in there. So number 2, then they all had a little bit of copper, to be honest with you. Copper, not yet, but was very close. This one, it just starts to come through. Copper right there, and copper. So they were all, except number 6 being the best one, they were all literally going through. So obviously, as James from Redish also said, the upper bearings are the ones that suffer the most, that has the hardest life. Obviously is the ones that stays at the top. So when the combustion happens on the cylinder and it pushes down the cylinder, all that pressure is going to go on the upper bearing. Not much pressure goes on the lower bearing, obviously. So they are the ones that takes all the pressure from the combustion, all the thrust that comes from the rod, from the Conrod. But that's it, guys. I don't know what else to show you, really. This is what it is. Glad I got this done. So this is the state of the bearings. I'm going to keep this, as he also mentioned. Who knows, one day for the next owner of the car, whatever. And that's about it, really. I don't have much more to say. Right, what else to say? Job is done. Honestly, every time I look for this bearing, I feel extremely lucky that I didn't let it in there for longer. When you look at the bearing, if I put it on the side, for example, to number 3, and I align both bearings, you can see that number 2 was already contracted. You can see in there. So these bearings, when they go on the cap or on the rod, they kind of clip in, so they are a little bit under pressure. This one, because of the heat, was already sort of dropping in, so it would be a matter of time until it go around. But yeah, guys, so you've seen who did the job, Redish Motorsport in Bristol. I'm not making any publicity. I paid the full price. I didn't get any discount, unfortunately. But that said, I would say that the way they did the job feels very, very. It gives you a lot of confidence that the job has been done properly. The guy was happy to answer any questions. The way I was dealt with was fantastic. I have no complaints whatsoever. And I think that's it for this video, guys. That's it. Another job done on the M5. Probably the main job that I had to do since I bought the car. It's done now, and peace of mind now, hopefully, for the next few years. I don't need to worry about it. So that's it, guys. Yeah, I just hope you enjoyed the video. Hope there's something here that you can find useful. If you do have any questions, any comments, please put them below. And like always, thanks for watching.